I really just realised I could just about see the reflection of the screen in a picture that I've got hung up over there. So that's what I don't know if you can see that, but hey, this is my Christmas jumper. So we have made it to the end of the year, near enough. I normally don't like doing top and bottom lists until I've actually finished out the month, the year, because I think, we're not there yet, but this is the most disappointing books. These are the worst books I read, and I'm in the middle of two very massive books that I'm enjoying a lot, so even if I do finish them this year, it's very unlikely they'd make it on this list, so I feel pretty confident making a start. So hi, my name is Emma, and I'm going to talk about my most disappointing books of the year. I'm going to start with a couple of DNFs. So I've had a shelf of books that I've owned for at least a decade in some cases. So this year I picked some up occasionally, and unfortunately I think all three books that I picked up have made it to this list. So the first two, which were DNFs, so one was the Shadow Magic trilogy. I think this was just that it wasn't for me. It was clearly like YA, maybe even children's fantasy. I think if I'd read it when, I don't know, I was like 12, 13, 14, I might have enjoyed it a lot more, but it was just too simplistic, too young leaning for me, and the story felt very standard. So this is the issue I have. I can't even really do YA fantasy, because as a fantasy fan, I'm now used to going in more in depth or seeing brand new concepts that YA doesn't necessarily do. So yeah, that was a DNF for me. The other one was the Castle Omnibus. This one was weird. So I did manage to read further into it than I read years and years ago. But it's just a very odd book. There are some concepts in it that I quite like, that I find quite cool. But the format of the book, of the storytelling, wasn't what I expected. I thought this would be a big overarching story, and maybe it does get there, but after a while, after sitting with it through a part and a bit, I realised that the point of it was for the main character to hang around with other people and for us to get a snapshot of their lives, which would be an interesting concept, but it just wasn't gelling with me, unfortunately. And maybe if it was a shorter book or if it was just the one book, maybe I would have stuck with it to the end, but I just knew I wasn't going to enjoy it, so it was a DNF for me. So we're on to the books that I did finish, and so these are the most disappointing of the year. First is a non-fiction mentioned very recently on the channel, and that is What's Your Type? Disappointing because, and I think this happens with a lot of non-fiction books, the marketing around it and the blurb and the book cover kind of leads you to think it's going to be about something else. So this is talking about the Myers-Briggs test. I thought it was going to cover briefly how it was developed originally, and then I thought it would go into how it's being used in businesses in the modern day and how we got here, because to me that's really interesting. I thought that would be more like a You're Wrong About or Maintenance Phase podcast style story. It wasn't that, it was just the history of the two women that developed it and the uses at the time. So there was interesting stuff here, but it just wasn't what I was after, so it's definitely disappointing. Next was the Book of Form and Emptiness. This was a book on the... Did it even win? It was definitely shortlisted for the Women's Fiction Prize. And it sounded interesting. It sounded like there was some magical realism involved. And like there kind of is, but not really. So you have this boy who hears things, he hears objects speak to him, but it really just made me feel like I was being forced to read something for my GCSE. It was that kind of sad teenage boy going through sad things with his sad mum, and I just I was vibing enough with it to finish it, but it was a bit of a disappointment. Kings of the Wild. I'm sorry, everyone on the and this is probably why it was disappointing, but everyone on the internet hypes this up so much. I know, so I watched so many other booktubers who absolutely love it. I just didn't think it was that interesting. It wasn't funny enough to get over the shortcomings that I felt. I didn't think it was that original, and the kind of rock personas that they have in these comparisons to rock stars, I just didn't find that interesting. So this was just not for me, unfortunately. I will probably not be reading the second one, which is a shame because I know it's about one of their daughters, so I know we'd get more female characters coming in, but I just don't think I like the writing enough to give it a try. Next is a book that was also on the shelf, the 10-year shelf, and this was The Drowning City. So this wasn't a DNF, I did read the whole thing, and there was a lot to like about it. I really liked the setting, it was pulling inspiration from Asia at a time when that wasn't really happening in fantasy. And again, I think maybe if I'd read it at the time that I actually bought it, I might have enjoyed it a bit more, but there was just some failings in the writing. People weren't fully established enough and didn't behave in a way that I thought made sense. So unfortunately, even though there was some cool stuff happening, a lot of it just didn't stick the landing. Next is Greenbanks by Dorothy Whipple. Now, this is a bit of a different one in that I didn't expect to absolutely adore it because it's not really in a genre that I read very much. But this is one of the Persephone books, and Dorothy Whipple is a writer that they absolutely love. They really promote her heavily. And she comes from the same county as my husband, so there's a bit of a link there for me. Unfortunately, the story... I'm not really into old family dramas. This is set in the 30s. And there's also a lot of misogyny, and I said this in my wrap up. I think that is on purpose, to kind of highlight the struggles that women go through, but I just wasn't in the mood to read about it. I think that's the case for me quite a lot. Nothing else to say other than it just wasn't for me. I'm sure it will be for other people. Clearly it is, because the people at Persephone Books love this writer. I don't know if I'll try any of her others. Maybe I will. But yeah, sadly, how many times in this video can I say, not for me, thanks. Oh god, I don't know if there's dust. This jumper, my eyes keep itching. Oh, or maybe I'm allergic to the final book. If this cover wasn't so pretty, this would be going in the bin. Never mind selling it or giving it away. This is The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. Oh, I hated this book. I hated this with passion. Yeah, it's just so cynical, and you know, if this was written today, we'd be putting this in the edgy category. You know, there's boys who hang around in a group and then they like kill a kitten, they harm a kitten, and then they you know praise men that act really manly and violent and don't give a shit about it, and they're disappointed when adult men just behave like adults, you know, and are nice to people. And I hate it so much. It is everything I hate in stories. You know, this is as bad as making me read the script to the Joker. Oh, this is just terrible. But even worse, I think. And after learning more about Mishima, not a fan of the guy. Not a fan. Yeah, it was an interesting journey, I guess. But I only made it through because it was this short. If it was any longer, really, realistically, I was just going to DNF it because I just hated this with a passion. So these were my most disappointing books. I don't know when I'll do my favourite books. It might even be in the new year, just to see if any books do sneak their way in the next couple of weeks. But thank you for joining me. Tell me what books disappointed you this year. You know, are there some books that you think are overrated, like I found with Kings of the Wild? And I will shut up about that now, because I'm sure people will massively disagree with me. But have a great Christmas and New Year and Hanukkah and everything else. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.